God, if you will, for Adams, is the inescapable commanding reality that sustains and transforms all meaningful existence. The renowned occupant of the Mark Twain House in Hartford once commented that one should never discuss religion or politics in polite company. The intent being, of course, that controversial subjects are difficult in social conversations and casual conversation. There's a point to that in the sense that not every conversation we are part of needs to be confrontational, adversarial, when somebody says something we disagree with, especially about things that are important to us. But today, I'm going to risk some vulnerability, and considering you all polite company, I'm going to talk about both of them because I want to encourage you to be vulnerable and perhaps a little more often risk talking about religion and politics and be vulnerable enough to seriously examine your own religion, values, faith, and politics periodically. Because these things are, in a very real sense, I believe, intertwined all the time. But first, let's take a pop quiz. Kate is passing out our pop quiz. This will count towards 20% of your semester grade. Just kidding, just kidding. No copying off your neighbor. Do your own work. Put your pencil down when you're finished. Just kidding. So we'll go through this together. The first question asked, what year did the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America merge to form the Unitarian Universalist Association? 1961. What did the Unitarian Universalist Association do to tick off J. Edgar Hoover, Congress, and the IRS and cause federal subpoenas to be delivered to UUA headquarters in Boston? We published the Pentagon Papers. The Unitarian Universalist Association published the Pentagon Papers. What's the origin of the flaming chalice symbol? The Austrian artist Hans Deutsch developed it for the American Unitarian Association's work in Nazi Europe in the early days of World War II. The Universalists were the first denomination to fully ordain a woman to the ministry in the United States in 1863. What was her name? Olympia Brown. And does anyone know what congregation in Connecticut was among the half dozen or so she served in her career? Stanford. Stanford. Modern Unitarianism developed in which European kingdom? Transylvania, yes. Don't make vampire jokes when you go there. They don't like it. Oh, would I skip one? Where did I skip? Oh, yes. This is my best question. What year did William Ellery Channing deliver his famous 1819 sermon on Unitarian Christianity? Yes. It's a trick question. What is the literary and philosophical movement started by early Unitarians who found even liberal Christianity too limiting? Transcendentalism, even earlier than humanism. American religious humanism would grow out of gets started by the transcendentalist movement. Unitarian Universalism is a creedless faith with no dogma. Does this mean a Unitarian Universalist can believe whatever they want? No. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Are Unitarian Universalists required to be activists? No. Just because most of us are, it's not a requirement. In what city was the first the first Universalist church in America and the first Unitarian church in America? Boston is the first which? Unitarian. And the first Universalist? Gloucester, Massachusetts. What is important about the 2003 Massachusetts Supreme Court decision, Goodrich versus Department of Public Health, and what is its connection to Unitarian Universalism? That decision is what legalized same-sex marriage in Massachusetts. The lead plaintiffs, as well as many of the other plaintiffs in the lawsuit, were Unitarian Universalists. Hillary Goodrich is still employed, I believe, by the Unitarian Universalist Association, and lent her name to the decision. What is Tapestry of Faith? Religious education curriculum available free online to everybody. What's that, Jack?
So we all could have passed.
You all could have passed, indeed. And in some measure, this stuff isn't that important. It's as much trivia as tradition. Most of it, maybe not all of it, most of it's surface stuff, big bullet points that might be introduced in a class for new members or a basics of UU History and Theology 101. Some of you may know all of this, but my guess is there probably weren't too many people here who knew all those answers. There's probably something you didn't know. None of us like not knowing stuff. We show up here to a Unitarian Universalist congregation on Sunday mornings. Ignorance isn't one of our favorite things. But none of us know everything. And we can all always learn more and dive deeper into things that we already know a little bit about. My experience in nearly 20 years now as a Unitarian Universalist minister is that sometimes there are more Unitarian Universalists than we might think who have only a very surface knowledge of this tradition and its history and its theologies. Many of us arrive here in a free church, in a free religion with no dogma, and we're good. We don't take that deeper dive into the waters we finally found safe to swim in. To be more prepared to be able to converse in polite company about religion and its connection to your politics, we can see that we might benefit from a little deeper dive about our faith, values, and religion. And I would start off by saying Unitarian Universalism is a religion. Sarah F. Hoyt, in her essay, The Etymology of Religion, way back in 1912 in the Journal of American Oriental Society, notes that arguments for Latin derivation point to ligare, to bind, as the root of religio. The Roman poet Lucretius, as well as St. Augustine, make note of this derivation. Hoyt also says in her article, the University of Cambridge Etymological Dictionary points to an Old English word rec, which we now hear in things like I reckon. Rec, which means to care for. That traces its history back through Old Germanic to the root words rack and rag. So Unitarian Universalism is a body of history, theology, philosophy, and values that point to what we most care about, and sharing in that history and theologies and values and how we're bound to each other in this tradition. So I argue that Unitarian Universalism is not something we go to in order to be unreligious. We are a religion. We have a religious history, and we have a religious community made up of smaller religious communities. Many Unitarian Universalists have given up another religious community to be part of this one. So since we are a religion, it's difficult to say one is a Unitarian Universalist because you're not religious. You show up here. I would argue that does make you in some way religious. And this religion is comprised of people who share a faith. Because it is a free faith, all the members don't always share spiritual practices or theologies or philosophies, but there is a common ground in the things in which all our members place their ultimate trust and loyalty. Following James Luther Adams, in his 1946 essay, A Faith for the Free, in the journal Together We Advance, I'd point out to many people that many Unitarian Universalists, the word faith is a topic that, as Adams says, quote, puts a strain on the intelligence. To many of us, faith is seen as a belief in things that aren't facts, wishes. Other people consider faith to be whatever a particular church or religion or state or political party or tradition teaches. The Catholic faith, the Jewish faith, the Muslim faith. And as James Luther Adams reminds us, Mussolini said fascism, before being a party, is a religion. James Luther Adams argues that human history is not a struggle between the religious and the non-religious, but a battle of gods who make a claim on human allegiance. Almost 20 years ago, Unitarian Universalist President Reverend William Sinkford spoke about what he called the language of reverence. He felt it important that we recapture a language of reverence, of sacredness, of spirit, of ultimacy. Not necessarily a language of piety, but of reverence. And since he did that, I think Unitarian Universalism has moved toward being a more cohesive religious body, not in commonality of spiritual approach or agreement on all philosophical and theological ideas, but more as a people realizing we are creating together a community based in common values and a common approach and method for the purposes of love, justice, and community. And as such a community, we have a responsibility to be able to speak to other people in other religious communities in religious language about faith and why faith should point us to love and justice. And we should be able to point out to others when it does not. James Luther Adams tells us that every person gives their deepest loyalty to something or someone. Find out what that is, he argues, and you have found their God. A person may claim to be a Christian or a Muslim or Jewish or atheist, but speak against their deepest concern and loyalty, he says, from the pulpit or on the commuter train, and that person will forget whatever God their religion worships and rush to the defense of their one true God and one true faith. Because every person puts their trust in something, Adams argues everyone chooses a faith. James Luther Adams believed that we have no choice but to be free in the choice of our faith. And he believed the best thing to have faith in was what he called the transforming, creative, and sustaining power at the heart of existence. He believed the ultimate dependence for being and freedom is a creative power and process not of human making. It's that something beyond ourselves. God, if you will, for Adams, is the inescapable, commanding reality that sustains and transforms all meaningful existence. When this reality is in the place of the deepest trust and loyalty for people, What happens is the presence of love. Adam says, quote, that fulfills and goes beyond justice, a love that cares for, and he puts cares for in quotes, hearkening to the etymology of religion, cares for the fullest personal good of all, each and every human person. I like Adam's language about the commanding reality that sustains and transforms meaningful existence. I personally like it. And I like it because I think it can apply to many different perspectives. It can apply to the process of evolution, the experience of the reality of the universe which we find ourselves. I think it's a set of words, a way of describing that ultimacy that is open to many people within our umbrella of different religious perspectives and theologies and philosophies. Adam said that the free person's faith is not faith in oneself, but in the capacity of sincere persons to find freely together that which is worthy of their confidence. He believed that together we find that most reliable faith when we learn from each other through mutual criticism and discussion, and we encourage the rejection of old errors and the discovery of new insights and learning. Just like life, Adams taught that an unexamined faith is not worth living. This is important for Adams. He was born into a fundamentalist Christian family in eastern Washington state. He went to college in the Midwest where he became an atheist. And then he met a professor who was a Unitarian. And it rearranged everything for him. And he ends up being the leading theologian of a very humanistic form of liberal Christianity in the 20th century. And he creates for us, more so than any particular teaching, an intellectual method for doing liberal religion. As Chris Walton said in today's reading, theological liberalism is a method, not a set of theological conclusions. And one of those things that we have to find in this tradition is that you really can't just believe whatever you want. Adams says that religious liberals who think our liberalism encourages everyone to just think as they please are incorrect. In the faith of Unitarian Universalism, you can't believe whatever you want. We have a big tent. Yet, as huge as that tent is, it is still possible to stand outside from under the tent and get sunburned or rained on. At the point we can believe whatever we want, Adams argued, we become faith neutral. And I think it's important to remember that not taking sides by default takes the side of the oppressor against the oppressed and the powerful against the powerless. Adams does give us something, however, to hang some agreements on in terms of those values that we find ultimate trust and meaning in. In his essay, Principles for a Free Faith, he highlights 5 ideas which all liberal religious people, and all liberals in general, he argues, share. Unitarian Universalists have come to call these the 5 smooth stones of liberal religion. I reference them all the time. For me, they're a great description of my faith. I find them more useful than the 7 principles, although I agree with all those ideas. And I find them more useful than the proposed revision to the principles, even though I agree with those ideas. And these 5 ideas are: revelation is not sealed. There is always more to learn. Truth was never and will never be set down for one time, for all time, by one God, one purpose, one person, one religion. There's always more to learn. We discard outdated ideas and adopt better ones. Evolution fits in here, science fits in here, as do better, more inclusive theological and philosophical ideas. His next point is that all human relationships should be based on respect and mutual consent and never coercion. He developed the core of this thinking while he was spending a year in Germany in the late 1930s. So justice, fairness, equity, love, compassion, kindness, they all fit under that umbrella of that one for me. He also notes that we have a moral obligation to ourselves and others to create a just and peaceful social order. And this leads him to his next big idea. We have an obligation to work for the good because, as he puts it, quote, there is no such thing as the immaculate conception of virtue. Good things don't just always happen. We must be involved in working for the good, doing good, being good. It won't just happen without us. We cannot be unengaged in the world, in life. And finally, we trust that there are enough resources. He said human and divine, but I think human, divine, natural. You can frame that however you wish. There are enough resources to justify an attitude of ultimate, if not immediate, optimism. For me, that's a great description of my faith, my ultimate trust, my values. I like it because it sums up a lot of stuff for me. I encourage you to explore it. Every faith needs a community of practice. You can be spiritual by yourself. I don't think you can be religious by yourself. We need a community in which to practice, to put our faith, our ultimate values, our ultimate loyalties into action. We teach about it and learn about it and develop it together in community. According to James Luther Adams, a free and liberal faith achieves freedom in community only through the power of organization and the organization of power. I think we need a free faith for the organization of power so that power in our world is held accountable to responsible and positive values. Here in our society, we don't use the word church. It's understandable. Society, fellowship, meeting, congregation, all much more inclusive terms. But there's something about the etymology of church that I really like. That church comes from the Greek word ecclesia. And that meant the body of citizens who made decisions in the Greek city-state. And our liberal congregations do reflect that, I think, which is great. So I get angry at Christianity for messing up the connotations of a really cool word. At a ceremony marking the 150th anniversary of the American Unitarian Association's founding, which was held at the Arlington Street Church in Boston, which was the inheritor of the Federal Street Church where Channing started the American Unitarian Association. In 1975, John Luther Adams spoke about the qualities or marks of what is a free church, a free society, if you will, a free congregation. It's a quite lengthy essay. So I've made a bullet point list of his main ideas. He says a free church, covenants with each other as members and with the transforming, sustaining, creative power. It rejects human claims to absolute truth. It creates a priesthood and a prophethood of all its members. I love that line myself. A priesthood and a prophethood of all its members. It fights for the free and inclusive participation of all in the congregation and in society. It liberates people from oppressors of the world. It continually transforms itself as it seeks to transform society. It rejects routine conformity and thoughtless nonconformity. It seeks unity in its diversity. It responds to the spirit of life and love. It liberates people from oppression and exploitation. It develops new language and new forms for cooperation, for broader inclusion. It behaves like a pilgrim on an adventurous journey. It binds together the past, present, and future. It's always open to new insight and the demands of conscience. It yearns to be part of a universal church, a universal, I would say, human religiousness. It rejects despair and responds in hope to the light that shines in darknesses. In India last year, a mob of Hindu men beat a Muslim man to death for carrying a package of beef. Cows are sacred to Hindus, so of course they killed a non-Hindu for not following Hindu beliefs. Last week, a Catholic bishop in Rhode Island told Catholics that eating meat on St. Patrick's Day this year is a sin, because Catholics abstained from meat on Fridays during the Christian season of Lent, which is now, and St. Patrick's Day was on a Friday in Lent. Donald Trump, who claims he didn't instigate an attempted coup on January 6, 2021, has said on social media he expects to be indicted and asked his supporters to take to the streets. 3 of just countless examples of what happens when people choose a faith that does not truly deserve human loyalty and trust. Not that the particular faith they practice might not be worthy, but certainly their practice of it isn't worth that kind of trust and loyalty. For that misplaced trust puts ultimate trust and loyalty in hate and violence and abuse and things that are intellectually indefensible. It matters what we believe. Our faith matters. Our religion matters. It's important we don't reduce our faith and our religion to being a social club or gathering of anti-religious people. This religion of Unitarian Universalism and its faith is a good one. It's my favorite. I think it's also one humanity really needs right now. It's worth diving deeply into, exploring, debating, co-creating its present and future together from its past. It's worth being vulnerable and talking about in polite company and impolite company. And I think it's worth our loyalty and our trust.
Thanks a lot for watching this video. It would help me out a great deal if you liked the video to give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, share this video with others, maybe ring that notification bell so you can be informed when we put out other videos like this. Check out my website and blog at tonylorenzen.com for even more resources that will open your mind, touch your heart, and inspire your spirit.